Welcome back here to Lady Lovestead Reads. My name is Jessica, and this is my 2022 best books of the year. And I think my dog Maggie's probably gonna growl through the whole thing, so you've been warned. I am just going to share these books in no particular order except for the very last one, which will be my favorite book of the year. Maggie is rolling around on my office couch, moaning, groaning, and growling. Living her best life, really. So, okay. The first favorite book of the year was We Spread by Ian Reid. This is a psychological horror, and it's about a woman who is slowing down, getting older, and her husband who passed, he set up a plan for her that her landlord, when he noticed things going awry, would send her to a retirement home. And she falls down, and the landlord finds her like a day later, and so he decides it's time. So she gets to this retirement home, and it's very small. There's only like 4 other people that live there with her, along with 2 care staff. And a lot of weird things start happening, and you're really wondering, is this something supernatural and freaky and weird? Is there something shady going on at the retirement home? Or is this an elderly or / mature woman who is going through dementia? And she starts losing time and having blackouts for periods of time, and these weird things are happening, and the whole time you're just not completely sure what's going on, and it's fantastic. I loved it so much. I really have been liking books lately that touch on the themes of aging, death and dying, and what it means to live a life full, like a full, well-lived life. How do we do that? It's something I've really been thinking about a lot since my father passed in October, and I feel like this book does a really good job addressing those topics, and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I think all of these books I gave 5 stars, so we'll just go with that assumption when I talk about them. Next is a nonfiction called Wintering by Catherine May, and this is about how different cultures across the world handle winter. And here in the US, at least, we've been taught to see winter as a really bad thing, but the book really embraces winter and like how we can see winter as a restorative and peaceful and healing time, and how we can have symbolic winters personally. I absolutely love winter. It's my favorite season. I really dislike that it gets such a bad rap here in the US. I live in northern Iowa specifically for the frozen tundra it becomes in the winter. I love it. I thrive in it. I'm a polar bear. So any kind of work that lifts up winter and celebrates it is a book that I'm going to love. Inventing Latinos. This is another nonfiction. It is by Laura E. Gomez, and it basically traces the history of racism against Latinx cultures in the United States. It's really, really informative. It's dense. It reads a bit like a textbook, but it's very good. I learned a lot from it, and I highly recommend it. Next, I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. This is a memoir about Jeanette's experience growing up in Hollywood as a young childhood actor and her mom's abuse. Like, her mom is extremely abusive. She psychologically abuses primarily. And it's also about Jeanette's experience with her body image, eating disorder, self-harm tendencies, addiction. I mean, she really covers a lot of heavy topics, but her writing is so exquisite. She has a very unique voice, and there's so much like little bits of humor threaded in it, and it's like sharp cutting humor that I really, really liked. And I loved her writing voice, and I hope that she writes more. Several People Are Typing by Calvin Kasulke. I think that's how you say his name. And this is a satirical work of fiction, literary fiction. It's written in the form of a Slack chat. It's about a character who accidentally uploads his soul to a Slack conversation, and then the rest of the story is about him trying to get his soul back into his body. It really addresses themes of like overwork, work addiction, capitalism, capitalism's expectation of exploiting workers for the highest profit. And it's hilarious. The satire is on point. I have not laughed so hard reading a book and I don't even know how long. I got a copy of this for Christmas and I reread it, and since it's a Slack chat, it goes by really, really fast. So I just reread little snippets of it here and there and just have a good laugh. Like if I've had a rough day and I want to read some like deliciously dark humor and satire, I'll pick it up and read 20 pages, and it's such a good pick-me-up. Such a good book, very unique. Love his writing style, love his wit. We'll definitely be picking up more of his work in the future. Lord of the Flies by William Golding. This is the classic that most of you probably read in high school. I did not read this in high school. I read it for the first time this year and absolutely loved it. It's a super dark, I think it's like, I consider it to be like one of the original thrillers, right? It's about kids who get stranded on an island. They're like 10, 11, 9, 10, 11, around that age. And then they just have to survive. And it really is like a sociological study on what happens to groups of people when we're forced to survive and without any sort of social institutions to keep us in check. Loved this story. Bunny by Mona Awad. This one's a bit of a booktube darling. So this is about a woman who goes to an elite university studying writing, and there's a group of women that call themselves the Bunnies, and they behave really weirdly. They're strangely like codependent, and like they have these gatherings that they call the smut salon where they study literature and do other things. And this book just kind of gets weirder and weirder and weirder as you read it. Gets more and more abstract. It's one of those surreal books. By the end, I had really no idea what was happening, but I thoroughly enjoyed the ride. I loved the writing style. I liked the cynicism of this book. I really did. A lot of the books I loved this year had darker themes and were kind of misanthropic, and that was just the year I had, I think. And so I loved this book. I really did love it. I loved how abstract it was, how artistic it was. I liked how weird it was. It was such a ride. I'm definitely going to reread it because I feel like it's a book that you'll gather new and new layers out of. Each time you read it, you'll figure out something new. And maybe after my 50th reread, I'll finally understand what the heck happens in it, but gave it 5 stars for sure. Earthlings by Sayaka Murata. This is also one that kind of goes off the rails. It's about a young girl who thinks that she's an alien, and it also touches on a lot of similar themes to what I've really been grasping onto this past year, which was themes about capitalism and womanhood and overwork and the capitalist machine and just societal structures. And it really sort of explores what would people be like if we got rid of social expectations and went back to being feral humans. And when I say it goes off the rails, it really, really does. And I loved it. My favorite book of the year was actually slightly different in tone than the rest of the books I've been talking about, and it is Loveless by Alice Oseman. So this is a young adult, I guess it's a romance, might be more of a contemporary, about a woman who discovers she's on the asexual spectrum. So it's a college-aged woman. She figures out she's on the asexual spectrum, and it's really just about her figuring out how she can still have love, even though she doesn't have any sexual desire. And she's also aromantic, so she doesn't experience romantic attraction, but she still wants love. She still wants that kinship and that companionship. So it's about her figuring out how can she do that in her life. And it's just a beautiful story. I was so absorbed in this story, and being someone who's on the asexual spectrum myself, I identified with a lot of it. I'm not aromantic, and I'd love to see more asexual representation where the person also still desires romance. That would be really nice, because I feel like a lot of the ace representation is asexual, aromantic, which is what this book covers. But it's still a fantastic book. It really stuck with me. Had such an emotional experience reading this. Absolutely exquisite relationship building, character building, and the sort of the gradual build up to the climax in the story is so wonderful. The end scenes are just so satisfying, and the way everything comes together, I just loved it. It had a really big impact on me. Even though the rest of what really got me this year was like the dark and demented and twisted, this more positive book focused on love and friendship was my favorite book of the year. That's how good it was. Even in a year where that's not what I was craving, it was my best book of the year. So good. All right, that does it for my best books of 2022. What were some of your favorites this year? Have you read any of these that I talked about? What did you think about them? No spoilers for folks who still haven't read them yet. If you just want to let me know that you're here, go ahead and leave me the trophy emoji, because these books all got a trophy in my heart. And until next time, make sure that you continue to read good books, drink good coffee, take care of yourselves and each other. Bye!